This meeting is being
All right,
recorded.
everybody. Welcome to this week's Torah portion, Parshat Mishpatim. Um, if and as we've been talking about, we have been riding high on the themes of the past Torah portions, both in their drama and in their, in a sense, great spiritual divine revelation. We have Parshat Bo. Parshat Bo was when God came to personally take on Egypt and to take his people by the hand out of the land of Egypt. And from it, we have the Seder night. From it, we have the foundation of our heritage. From it, we have what we mention twice every single day, right? The leaving of Egypt twice every day. This dramatic moment forever stays with us. How could it get any more dramatic or any more meaningful, any more spiritual than Parshat Bo? Well, then the next Torah portion is Parshat Bishalach, right? Which is really, in a sense, the culmination of leaving Egypt, because even as they left Egypt, Egypt chased after them, as we talked about both in the the circumstance 2,500 well 3,500 years ago, as well as what we face in our own leaving of Egypt, where you may have left the original paradigm, but then it follows you and tries to schlep you back. And so we have the dramatic splitting of the Red Sea, where before the eyes of every single one of the Jewish people, they literally did, not only before their eyes, they walked through the miracle, right? They walked, and it wasn't as remarkable to think about. We spend up the entire night of Shvi Ishal Pesach, the 7th of Pesach, which is the anniversary of when it occurred, because the Jewish people were walking through the night. Can you imagine? This wasn't a fireworks show that lasted a couple of minutes or an hour. This was hours and hours and hours. They were walking between standing walls of water. I mean, they were experiencing the miracle. They were immersed, metaphorically, not physically, because they were not immersed, right? But they were surrounded by this miracle hours. They were experiencing this miracle. And the revelation was even a step up from the moment of leaving Egypt. As it says, it was actually, in a sense, the greatest revelation that individuals had. Masha ra'a shifcha al hayam, what even a maidservant saw on the sea. That the great prophet Ezekiel did not see all his days. The greatest prophets in the pantheon of prophets, Ezekiel is right up there in the top 5, and he did not see, even though he saw the Merkavah, right? We said he's one of those who shares the imagery of the Merkavah of God's chariot. He did not see what even a maidservant saw at the splitting of the sea. And as we said, Zekeli ve'anveu, they were able to point with their finger and say, there is God. And so in terms of the drama and the revelation and the spiritual inspiration of that moment and its reverberation through history, it's even a step up from Yetziat Mitzrayim. How do we get greater than that, right? How do we get even more inspirational, more dramatic, more spiritual revelation than that? The next Torah portion is Parshat Yitro, Mount Sinai.
Bingo!
Right? Anochi Hashem Elokecha, God Himself descends on the mountain and talks directly to every single one of the Jewish people and says the first 2 commandments, and literally their souls leave their bodies because it's so much divine revelation. And it is, in terms of its reverberation, there is no Torah portion that has a greater reverberation in terms of Jewish life and practice. It is the 10 Commandments. So we've been like soaring, Parshat Bo to Parshat Mishalach to Parshat Yitro. Where do we go from that? And then we hit Parshat Mishpatim, and it seems to be an absolute downer, right? If your bar mitzvah portion was Parshat Bo, wow, right? Leaving Egypt, the plagues, the moment, right? Bishalach, the splitting of the sea, wow, amazing. right? Parshat Yitro, the Ten Commandments. Can you imagine just like you miss it, like you look at the anniversary of your bar mitzvah, and it's like you miss it by a day, and you almost Parshat Yitro. It's like when you're spinning like the wheel of fortune, and it's like tick tick tick, and it just one tick too far, and you landed Parshat Mishpatim, right? This week's Torah portion. So boring, right? It's so practical. There's no drama, no inspiration, no revelation. It literally reads like a law book. In fact, it is the parsha that ends up being the foundation of most of the civil and social laws of Judaism. Right? If you damage, right? This is how much you have to pay. When do you have to pay? How do you have to pay? How do you assess? If you're buying and selling, this is when it is considered a sale. This is when it's not considered a sale. It's like, what? We were riding this great spiritual high, and we just came crashing down into regular life without any warning. Without any warning. It's like if you're kind of that rabbi that just like you thrive on the passion and the drama. You come to Parshat Mishpatim, it's like I got nothing here. Like there's no story to tell here. And why in the world? And by the way, it's not like there is more drama to tell. In fact, chronologically, the next moment is something that occurs in a couple of Torah portions from now, which is the golden calf. Chronologically, the golden calf happens right here. Right? These stories about Moshe teaching the rest of the details of the Torah, and then later what's going to follow from that, the building of the Mishkan, all that is actually after the golden calf. And yet we kind of, we cut and pasted, and right after the Ten Commandments, we dropped in these Torah portions, seemingly like a non sequitur, and then we get back to the storyline later.
I think it's such an interesting message that,
Oh,
hey guys,
yes, it is.
You got to live a life.
Okay. So, obviously everything in the Torah is exact. Everything is choreographed to teach us the greatest and most important lessons. The parsha begins with a letter. What letter?
What bet?
Bet.
No, not the Torah. This parsha. The Torah begins with bet. Oh. This parsha begins with a certain letter. Ve'ela hamishpatim.
Vav.
Ve'ela hamishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. Now here's something interesting. How many Torah portions begin with the letter Vav? Begin with and.
Va'erav. There's a lot.
A lot of them.
There's a lot.
Okay. Look, starting from Bereshit, right? Vayer Chayesara, right? Toldot, right? After Toldot, Vayetze, Vayishlach, Vayeshet, right? Vayigash, Vayechi, right? Va. All these vowels, okay? So much so that it's so much the proclivity of the Torah to begin a sentence with va, and that it becomes the way that if anybody wants to, in a sense, speak biblically, right? If they want to present almost like speak with like biblical jargon, you're going to start those sentences with and, right? And he went, right? That automatically, you make your voice a little bit dramatic, and you throw an and at the beginning of your sentence, and you sound like you're talking biblically, right? And the day came, and it came to pass.
It's not even
he went,
grammatical.
Right? But it's not the only reason. It's not necessarily the word and if it's vav ha'hifuch.
Well, one second. Let me, before we start answering,
okay.
Let me flesh out. Yeah.
Okay.
You and Jerry are always like chomping at the bit. Flesh out the
A
question,
pain
then
in
we'll
the
jump into the
tuchus.
answer. So the Torah does this. Is a very regular device. First of all, because the Torah is not incumbent to English phonetics. Torah has no problem starting with a vav, starting a sentence with a vav. And for the most part, we don't even, it's so normal, as it were, that we don't even draw attention to it. We don't even like jump on and say, how can we start with a vav? Interestingly enough, this parsha, we do ask that question. Rashi asks that question. Ve'ela mishpatim. Rashi says, Eila, the word Eila generally is an exclusionary term. Eila means these. When you see when you say these, that's exclusive. It's an exclusive. You're saying, these and not anything else, right?
These,
When
not
do you use the
those.
words these? You're targeting. When you are targeting a specific thing, you're specifying, and you are therefore excluding everything else. You know, who's going on the trip? These people are going on the trip. What do I mean by these people? These and not those, right? Right? Which foods are healthy? These foods are healthy. These and not those, right? So Rashi says, as a general rule, linguistically, Eile, these, Eile hamishpatim, these are the commandments, right? Would be exclusionary, and defining and specifying. But there's a way to change the meaning or the connotation to the exact opposite, and to make it inclusionary. To take the word "eile" and make it inclusionary, or inclusive, when you put a vav, ve'eile, and these. Then what are you saying?
There was a lot more before.
That this group is included in what I was saying earlier. When God opens up this parsha, and God is talking here, it's not just when I say God as in the Torah. God is literally talking. Who is he talking to? Talking to Moshe. And it's fascinating, right? Okay, well, hold that thought for a moment. There's going to be a fascinating point in a moment. But we're saying, Ve'ele hamishpatim, and these are the commandments you should place before them. Now, that is a puzzling vav, right? That's a puzzling vav. This is not a vav ha'ipul. This is a vav underlined and bolded. Right?
Absolutely.
And these, right? We're saying not exclusive, and, right? And these. We have changed the entire meaning of the word. It's not saying these are, rather, and these are. We're hitching this group to something earlier, right? We're hitching this wagon.
It means among other things.
Yes, but more importantly, among other things that we have already stated, right? Because you can't, and these means it's on the leg end of something mentioned earlier, right?
It's very legal. It's very legalistic, this whole argument.
It is. Well, this whole parsha is incredibly legalistic. Again, this whole parsha is the foundation of all.
It's the science of reading statutory language, which, each little letter and each little.
Where do you think they got it from? Honestly, where do you think the idea of this is? Because that's the fact that we begin our davening. We're saying these are the 13 ways to define language. Kal v'chomer, Gzeira Shava, the A40 and hermeneutics. Very good, right? And Herman would be very proud of the fact that he is forever remembered.
Herman Munster. Yep.
Anyways, Mr. Nudix.
Right. So the Rashi asks, or the Rashi cites the Talmud asking the obvious question, or making rather the obvious point. Why does this parsha start off, and these are the laws that you shall place before them? And it's saying, what's it connecting these laws to? And the Talmud says a very famous and powerful statement here. Ma'elu misinai af elu misinai. Just like we're hitching all the laws and statutes we're about to lay out, back to what was mentioned in the parsha before. What laws and statutes were mentioned in the parsha before? Last week's Torah portion was Parshat Yitro, and the laws that were mentioned were literally the Ten Commandments. Ma'elu Sinai, af elu Sinai. Just like those, the Ten Commandments were given at Mount Sinai, had the validation of the divine revelation of Sinai, and nobody could claim these are anything else but the divine will. Af elu Sinai. So to every single law that follows hereafter, ve'ele hamishpatim, and these as well, giving it the same validation and the same foundation as the Ten Commandments themselves. Ma'elu misinai, af elu misinai. The Torah is going out of its way, so much so that the parsha does not open up with, like every other Torah portion, when God is talking to Moshe with that most famous statement, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, right? The Torah drops that out to make it even more seamless, and kind of picks up almost in the middle of a conversation, right? The Elam Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneim. And these are, wait a minute, who's talking to who? Right? Okay, you'll figure out that very quickly that it's God talking to Moshe. Why not give that introductory phrase? Because we want to make a very strong point of the seamlessness of these mitzvot to what was heretofore mentioned, the Ten Commandments. And these as well. That's that vav. So important. Now, you can say, okay, so the Torah is just making a legal point, right? Kind of to Jerry's point, right? The statutory context here, saying language, saying give these the same strength of law as the Ten Commandments. These are as firmly grounded. But I think it's making a more important point. Not I think it's making. The Rebbe Chassidus explains that to our earlier point, what kind of Jerry was alluding to, there is a very powerful, in a sense, philosophical point being made here, not just legal point. We've all been riding the spiritual high of Parshat Bo, Parshat Beshalach, Parshat Yitro, right? It's been an absolute sugar high in terms of divine inspiration and revelation and drama. And we're kind of really loving this kind of Judaism, right? This kind of dramatic and spiritual Judaism, etc. Yeah, I can get behind this. This is exciting stuff. This is exciting Yiddishkeit. This is dramatic Yiddishkeit. This is kind of taking me out. This is like super. This is like the supernatural Yiddishkeit. This is like this escapism Yiddishkeit, if we even dare go that far. And God says, now, ladies and gentlemen, you had your Mount Sinai, you had your leaving Egypt, you climbed even higher into the splitting of the sea, you climbed even higher to the revelation of Mount Sinai. Great. Now what? You know what's now what? Take it, grab all of that, and plunge right back into the world. That's Yiddishkeit. Judaism does not remain there in seventh heaven.
Rabbi, so they were.
One second. Judaism is not sitting there and meant to take you and to have you launch out of this world and float among the clouds in this great spiritual revelation and inspiration, where you're feeling great and you can kind of disconnect from the mundane and from your day-to-day life and your day job, whatever it is. What a great holy place to and inspirational place to escape to. God says that's not what Yiddishkeit is here for. It's not to give you a sugar high, a spiritual sugar high. Yiddishkeit is your job and mission. And sure, you're there at the top of the mountain. But now what? Now take it, come down off the mountain, and plug it into the world. Plug it into your life. Plug it into the 6 days of the mundane week. Your Yiddishkeit is ma'elu mi Sinai af elu mi Sinai. Just like Mount Sinai was this great, transcendent, and inspirational and elevating moment that took you beyond anything of your physical and material, and you were able to get lost in holiness. Af elu mi Sinai. This is just as much Sinai, the laws of how you're meant to lend and borrow and acquire and repay damages and keep proper borders and gates between between neighbors. That's just as much Sinai as being there and hearing Anochi Hashem Elokecha from God Himself. And that's what you have to be able to achieve and understand and take as your responsibility. Living an ethical life in your day-to-day is just as much Sinai as praying in the synagogue and getting lost in your prayers. That's the very important, and that's why this parsha had to immediately follow after Parshat Yitro. Don't assume that the pinnacle of Judaism is way up there in heaven. Now that you have all that inspiration and all that spirituality, bring it and bring that deep and very definitely into the world, because your job and your role here is not to be an angel on earth, but to make earth more angelic.
Can I ask my
Your
question?
job, yes.
So they were instructed at this point how to live, but then they went through the desert for 40 years. Was that they were studying how they were going to live when they came to their land?
Sure.
Oh.
You teach a kid in elementary school how to live, but you don't throw him into the world until he's learned the skills. Right? For 40 years, they eat manna. Hey, Bert. How are you doing? Bert, you're allowed to participate in the class also. Les needs a
Right.
male compadre here.
We allow men on this one, Bert.
Yes.
Yeah, left.
Yes. No, Les is here. Les is here. No, you should know what happened. We were just talking about the manna, right? We said the 40 years they eat the man, and Bert thought I was talking about men. He said, "Okay, here I am." Yes.
Carry on.
Thank you,
Carry
sir.
on.
We shall. Anyways, either way, let's back to the point. That's exactly it, Jerry. So God has to teach us for the 40 years what they were learning how to master this art of taking their spiritual and marrying it with their material. Had they been just thrown in, it would have been, again, like taking an elementary school child and saying, go figure it out, by, throwing somebody into the river and saying, learn how to swim. So God understood 40 years until you reach maturity, 40 years in the desert until you'll master, you'll have the manna from heaven. So you'll, in a sense, remember and learn that even as you are getting your physical sustenance is coming from heaven, that there needs to be this a seamless union between your material and your spiritual. Your spiritual serves your material serves your spiritual, and that and so they can't immediately jump in, because otherwise they would revert right back to their materialism, the way that unfortunately we all have the propensity to do. So for 40 years they needed to really hone their spiritual awareness while existing in the world. Right, and then they were able to.
That sounds real.
Because you think about all the Nobel Peace Prizes, that Jewish people have brought to the world. It's interesting when you're talking about this. That's what it makes me think about. That we don't sit back. We do give.
And that's the point, and it's a beautiful thing. We also have to be careful, though, Diane, that simultaneously we don't leave Mount Sinai in the rearview mirror as we jump back into the world. In other words, yes, advances in all these things, in medicine and in technology and in diplomacy and all these things. We should continue to contribute on all these fronts. But we should do so with a sense of spiritual purpose, to understand that that's the thing. We take Mount Sinai with us into the world, and it's not. We don't live a bifurcated lifestyle where it's either or. Yes, Paul.
This is really good for Plan A, but in fact, none of this generation went into Eretz Yisrael.
Right. But they were
Right.
teaching, they were teaching.
But we weren't talking to one generation. Nothing in the Torah is meant for just those that it is talking to in the moment.
Except I thought we I'm sure I'm confused. I thought we started by saying this was a continuation of what was heard at Sinai. If you're
Yeah,
saying
absolutely.
we were all standing at Sinai, okay, fine.
Sure.
And maybe that's exactly what you're saying.
No, yes, but also to understand that we look at the Jewish life, right? Not as the 70, 80 years, 90 years that we all live, but starting from, in a sense, Avram Avinu, all the way till it's one seamless life. Now, that segment of it, that generation of it, lived the elementary school age part of it, right? Where they had to hone the skills, as it were. And okay, that generation ended before they, and necessarily so, because to a certain degree, that's what we're saying. That's the nation achieved maturity with the next generation. So again, and that to a certain degree is exactly
Can
the
I
point.
add-
This shows
can I add
us one minute.
something?
One minute. This shows us that the Torah was not just given to that generation, because as you said, and as we know, the majority of the mitzvahs were something that generation couldn't even fulfill. Forget the mitzvahs that they couldn't do because they weren't the land of Israel. They weren't lending and borrowing and selling and all these things. Because they didn't really have an economy and a civil economy at that time. But again, the Torah was not given to them. The Torah was given to us. They're part of us, right? And we are part of them, etc. But the point is, as me in the year 2024, as learning the Torah, what's my takeaway from this week, from this parsha, is something incredibly inspirational. One might even say even more inspirational than last week's Torah portion. Because last week's Torah portion gave me a sense that if I want a divine revelation, if I want spirituality, I have to escape to Mount Sinai. And I will really only have it for those precious few hours that I'm in the Beit Medrash. Or those one day a week where it's Shabbos. Right? Otherwise, I've got it like Motzei Shabbos, I do Havdalah, say goodbye to God, and I'll see you in a week. Right? Right?
I hope
And
not.
right. But this parsha opens up with an incredibly inspirational vav. Right? That vav is everything. Ve'eleh. This life, the rest, what you're going to read about this Torah portion is going to sound very familiar. It's going to be the 6 days a week that are not Shabbat. And all of a sudden, Ve'ela, you're taking Mount Sinai, you're taking the divine revelation with you into every single day and every single moment of your life. Don't you dare leave God behind on Mount Sinai. Don't you dare leave God in the synagogue. Don't you dare leave God at home. Even. God is in your place of business. God is in the marketplace. Your spirituality, you can plug in to your spirituality everywhere. God, your spirituality or your Yiddishkeit is a mobile device, right? You can plug it in anywhere. Or it doesn't even, or it could be entirely wireless. You can, wherever you are, you're plugged into your Yiddishkeit. You're plugged into your relationship with God. Ve'eleh Mishpatim, ma'elu misinai, af elu misinai. Just as your spiritual moments in the Beit Medrash, right there at the foot of the mountain, in Shabbos, whatever it is, just like that is Sinai. Your business day is also Sinai. really think about, is there any other religion that articulates such a universal relationship with God? You're not in the church, you're not in the mosque, you're in your place of business. And in your place of business, I pointed out something fascinating last week. In terms of God's presence, this was in Shul and Shabbos. It says, in terms of God's presence, which buildings, as it were, need a mezuzah? We know your home needs a mezuzah. I'm going to give you 3 places that need a mezuzah, and you're going to tell me, and one of them doesn't need a mezuzah. 3 types of buildings, and one of them does not need a mezuzah, and you'll try and guess which one. Your home, a shul, your place of business. Which of those 3 do not need a mezuzah?
It's a trick question, right?
It is.
Look who's asking it. Of
Okay,
course,
they
it's a
all-
quick
Yeah.
trick question.
Exactly right. So before you try to kind of figure out the twist, if you had to just give your first immediate impulsive response, you would say, does a house need a mezuzah?
I would, yeah.
Say, absolutely. Somebody's giving the thumbs up on the screen. Right. How did that do that? Oh my God, that's crazy.
You found
Do
that?
you see this?
Yeah,
Do you see this?
I
yeah.
don't see it.
I saw it on the screen.
The camera just tracked that I'm doing a thumbs up on my, there it is again.
Oh, now
Oh,
I see it on there. Yeah,
That is
Wow.
crazy.
That is crazy.
they're always watching us.
Don't make any other gestures. We don't know what's gonna
Right.
happen.
Exactly. Right.
Rob
But
Zoom.
anyways, so uh, house, yes, house, a synagogue. Synagogue's a holy place, of course, right? Place of business, right? That would be our impulse. That's the one. No, house
Okay.
needs a mezuzah. Your place of business needs a mezuzah. If it's a Jewish-owned business, it needs a mezuzah. A shul does not.
That was
Halachically,
yeah, that was my thought.
now, here's the thing. When I say shul, I have to be a little bit more specific. A Beit Knesset, a place purely of prayer, does not. A Beit Medrash, where you're doing more things than just praying to God. There's more of a kind of a communal life in it. It would warrant. But for example, the Beit HaMikdash did not need a mezuzah.
Right.
But your
makes
place
sense.
of business does.
It's
God's
like,
presence.
it's almost like gilding the lily.
Yes, correct. With the reason that a shul or the Beit HaMikdash did not is that you don't need God's presence in God's home, right? So the mezuzah is to bring a divine presence, a divine presence. Now this is different than Korach in asking if a room full of holy books, why would it need a scroll? That's a different. We're not going to go there. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds of this thing, but it makes a very powerful point. Does God's presence need to be in your place of business? Yes, it does. Or more importantly, God's presence is. The question is whether you're going to acknowledge it and make your place of business conducive for the divine presence that is everywhere. The mezuzah is less to bring in a divine presence and more to draw attention to the divine presence that is there. God's presence, all this world is God's, not just the holy parts of this world. Not just the synagogue or the home, but your place of business. Not just Shabbat, but all 6 days of the week.
But I have a problem with that. Let me say what I feel. If you're working with all Jewish people, yes, absolutely. But if you're not, I feel funny about that because you don't want to make them feel that we're different. We have enough trouble, being ourselves.
First and foremost, putting up a mezuzah is not again stating that this is a place that's only welcome to Jews. Because last time I checked, God is not just God of the Jews; He's everybody's God. And in terms of us being different, Diane, whether we like it or not,
We're different.
we are different, and the world will never let us forget it.
Oh, that's true.
The world will never let us forget it. The world has a very healthy understanding, consciously or subconsciously, that we, the Jewish people, are not just different, but we're going to be the center of things. for better or for worse. I've shared this before, but I'm sitting there driving somewhere, and in the station, it was on this random station I never heard before. It turns out it's actually apparently a little bit of a Russian propaganda station. Like we used to have like Radio Free America or whatever it was, blasting into Russia. So believe it or not, there's a radio station called Radio Sputnik. You can still find it. It's on one of our dials, whatever it is. It's a free country, and they're allowed to do it. And they're talking whatever it is. It's a philo Russian news station. Kind of promoting whatever it is. And they probably have 2.5 listeners, one of them being Putin. But either way, it doesn't make the point is that it exists. It exists as a radio station, and they're talking about, I think, at one point, even before Syria started to fall apart into the mess that it is now, there was like Syria was making push into some contested territory that Turkey also had claim over. I've got something was going on. And it was in the news for like 5.5 minutes, and so they're talking about and discussing it. Now, I was about to change the channel, but I'm like, let me give it another 30 seconds of my time and attention, because it's something happening in the world, and I'd like to be informed about it to some degree. And if it happens to be that somebody's discussing it right now, I'll listen. Okay, so I'm listening, and I had my fill, and I'm about to change the channel. And then one of the guys, two erudite guys talking, seem to both be quite well versed on the matter and geopolitics in general. And I heard one of them say, "But you know who's really behind this?" So I'm like, "Okay, I'll listen. I'll listen for another couple seconds. Who's really behind? Tell me who's really behind it. I'm interested in hearing." So the other guy says, "Who?" And the first guy says, "The one who's really behind all of this is Rothschild."
Right, of course.
And I'm like, child, the 1800s are calling. They want their anti-Semitism back. Child, like this is something occurring in some little corner of Syria, whatever it is. Nobody really knows or is paying attention. But somehow, and he goes on to explain, there's a banker in England named Rothschild, and he's doing this, and there's some tortured logic as to why the Rothschild would be behind this whole thing. And I'm like, whether we like it or not, even on an issue where we are entirely not involved, we're going to get schlepped in. The world does not look. The bottom line is, if God chose us, and not chose us for entitlement and to walk around feeling, but if God says, I need one nation to lead this effort of Letakin Olam b'Malchut Shaddai, right? To get the world to its destination. And he chose us, and he made it a choice. He turned to us and says, are you guys on board? I've got the Torah, and I'm going to make this entirely voluntary by holding a mountain over your head. And if you say no, it's going to come crashing down upon you. But right, but either way, we jumped in and said, nah, 7 issue, right? So we signed on the bottom line. From that point forward, we were the chosen nation that the world subconsciously understands, and in Jerusalem is going to be the focal point of attention, and the Jewish people are going to be the focal point of attention. Now, we're going to be the focal point of attention. We might as well do a good job of it and lead. And I want to tell you something. I promise you, except for the few truly rabid anti-Semites, nobody's going to have a problem with the mezuzah that's on the door of your business. Nobody's going to have a problem with it, again, unless they're true anti-Semites, and then they hate you anyways.
Right.
But putting a mezuzah on the door declares that even in this mundane space, we think about God. What is the point of a mezuzah? A mezuzah is there on the doorpost because you're going in and you're coming out with purpose and with a sense. You walk into this room. Why did you walk into this room? You walked into this room to perform whatever task or whatever it is that you wanted. But when you kiss the mezuzah, you are basically acknowledging that as I come in to perform this task, God is on my mind. And as I walk out of this room, having performed the task, I kiss the mezuzah and then said, God, I hope that what I've accomplished here was in line with godliness, and I move on to the next one. And that's the point of mezuzah. I draw attention. I make sure that my goings and comings are with God. Bo'achem l'shalom, tzeitchem l'shalom. Right? And that's the point of this parsha. Otherwise, this mezuzah should exist in your holy spaces, in your home, yes, but when you go to your business, you're going out there, that's not Sinai. Comes the parsha and says, Vav, ve'ele, Mishpatim, elu Sinai, af elu Sinai. And that is why Judaism does not bulk at all in giving you a litany of laws and rules and ethics and regulations for seemingly the most mundane aspects of your life. Because Yiddishkeit is 24/7, and everywhere. You're Yiddishkeit, you're a Yid, and you're connected with God, and there is a process and a procedure to everything you do. God is not in the synagogue. God is not there on Shabbos. God is everywhere and at all times. And it doesn't mean that you have to then spend all your day in prayer and in Torah study. No, it means that even as you go necessarily and do 6 days of mundane labor, it's not that mundane. It's actually quite holy, quite purposeful, quite sacred. And this, you put the mezuzah on the door of your business office, and you put a tzedakah box on the table of your office, and you say that I am engaged in Yiddishkeit. I'm engaged with Yiddishkeit even as I exist in the marketplace, even as I exist in my mundane space. And that's why I will act with a sense of ethics and a sense of morality. And I will do not what the almighty dollar says, but what the almighty God says. And even the dollar acquiesces to the almighty God. It's there on the money. Right?
In God we trust.
Correct. And so may we all be successful. This parsha throws perhaps the greatest challenge on us. Can you take Sinai into your mundane life? And every single one of us, no matter what it is that we are doing in our mundane time, understand very, very clearly and viscerally that there's a way I can do it that will just be purely mundane, or there's a way that I can invite godly purpose into this space. And that vav, that one little vav, at the beginning of this parasha, is perhaps the most impactful letter you will experience in your daily life. All right, everybody?
Yep.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Love is the loneliest letter.
I would actually make an argument that by its very definition, it cannot be a lonely letter. It means and. It's pulling,
Connected.
it magnetizes whatever is around it to join it in collaboration. Right.
Very nice.
Right.
Very nice. Okie dokie.
And just as a parting thing, Les is bringing out the mascot. Our Sfardea. He somehow survived the plagues.
Still we're talking about
and
this
he's-
Valdea.
All right, he survived the plagues and he made it all the way to Parshat Mishpatim. All right.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbat
everybody.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Rabbi. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.